Very good afternoon to all of you, and I welcome you as we gather for Brian this afternoon. And I only wish we didn't have to. It's not that long, 2018, since we were here with Brendan. And if I had any one wish for Brian today, it would be that himself and Brendan are together, probably cooking and gorging on good things. And Brian telling Brendan about COVID. You know. This afternoon, our gathering for him is one of great love. It is one of gifting him leave to go from us when we really don't want him to. And it's a gift of reassuring him that when his lovely mum and dad brought him into the world 55 years ago, you know, he was brought in with such love into a very beautiful and large family. And today, that family hands him back with the assurance that he is as loved as he was when he came into the world. And that's our job today. We commend him from our world and from our lives with great love because he deserves it. His day wouldn't be complete without the Times. So I'm going to give him the Times. And rather than having 100 people coming up here and saying beautiful things, they've all been placed into a lovely jiffy bag. And they're going with him. And Rachel is going to bring that jiffy bag. And they will stay with Brian. And because he was a light in your world, and a light in the world of many, many people, I'm going to place 2 candles, and I'm going to place them with the lovely flowers and herbs from his garden. And how beautiful it is that they are here. And I'm going to place 2 candles, one for him and one for Brendan. I'm going to ask Declan now to come and share some thoughts with us first, followed by Vincent.
I'll say a few words of my own, and then I'll read some thoughts from Aoife, my daughter and Bry's niece and one of his goddaughters on behalf of his nieces and nephews. She can't be here. She's in Singapore with her husband and her little son, Arlo. But hopefully she's listening in. Bry was an outlier from the very start and remained so all his life. He was always a sensitive one of the siblings, at least according to Mum. But he disguised it very well indeed. His health theories were well known to us, very experimental, and he was always practiced what he preached. It was all or nothing with him. The last bit of exercise he did was at boarding school on the rugby pitch, claiming to be faster than me. So there was an element of delusion in that potpourri character of his. He liked to drink, and he knew the answer may not lie at the end of the bottle, but with a typical check mindset, he really should check if it's there nonetheless. As his business partner, I can tell you he was a born optimist, like any entrepreneur. But business calls were always a competition to see who could be more realistic. A race to the bottom of the depression pit. He generally won that one, and even with the likes of Ed and Toby, joining the fray at different stages during his career. Bry was very giving, not least with his opinions. Always delivered with a directness and honesty that may have, let's say, confused the recipient. But you can get a more generous guy in all senses. And indeed, if you needed help, he was always the first there. A good man to have on the front line, I remember saying at his 50th. Stepping up to the plate when Dad fell ill. Must be a godsend. It was a godsend, and I use that term advisedly in his case, for Mum and all of us. His support for Mum in these past 13 years, even more so, since Dad has passed 3 years ago, will be a major part of his legacy, for which we are all extremely grateful. Bry was one of the brightest guys I, and probably anyone here, could ever meet. And that's the main theme from the long list of condolence messages coming in, along with his acerbic humour, his appetite for fun socially, but bright as hell in coming up with solutions. The fun and the coming up with solutions were rarely at the same time, though. He was languid by nature, but also extremely industrious when required, and always put the hours in. During the formative years, literally, as that was the name of our company, that developed the loyalty system for pubs and clubs, I remember many all-nighters, and indeed on occasions he had to sleep in the car in some godforsaken town in the middle of England. He always did it without complaint. He overthought certain scenarios, but then made decisions with Teflon thin information at other times. His and my normal decision-making process was a variation of the historical Phoenician style. Discuss something while you're drinking, and then again the following morning to sanity check it. Our variation on that was that we then repeat that for a month and still end up doing nothing. Bry, at least, had his position on issues, be it religion, food, business, and argued that position with gusto. Where is the science? One of his favourite expressions. And I threatened regularly to seek the science out and forcibly removed from his large intestine. Bry, you fitted a lot into your too short life. And we are all the better for it. We all miss you already. Rest well, wherever you are. You deserve it. Now here's Eva's thoughts. I was lucky enough to call Bry Uncle Burpee and my godfather, but really he was like a big brother. I came into this world stealing his birthday, but he was gracious enough to share it with me. We were birthday twins. Bry's idiosyncrasies made him unique. There was no one like our Bry. Memories of fetching beers from the fridge, somehow convincing us it was a competition to see who could get him the fastest drink. Playing chicken for sale, holding us upside down by our ankles, and Chinese burns until one of us would cry. His preference to always crash on the sofa rather than sleeping on a bed. The way he would say, "Bye, bye, bye." His detailed and thorough arguments on religion when I was 12. His favourite question to ask his nieces and nephews, "Who's your favourite uncle?"
Who's your favourite uncle?
The facial expression and moves he'd pull when a song came on that he liked. Patricia the Stripper comes to mind. The time he endured a West End show for our birthday, and the speed at which he leapt out of the seat to get to the bar as soon as the curtains started to move. I've never seen him move so fast. His understated sense of humour, which always had an underlying truth behind it. His love of The Simpsons, and once telling me that he was related to Bart. Insisting that I call my first child Brian, and informing me a few weeks later during my maternity leave to get a job already. The way he would put on his sunglasses and say, "Am I cool or what? Will chicks dig me?" No, Bry. How excited he'd get when he would talk about the latest renovation to Cedar House and his future plans for the house. His love of food, cooking, and going out to enjoy a meal in a restaurant, giving the waiters a run for their money, as well as the biggest tip they'd ever received in compensation. His love of travelling and staying at five-star hotels. He enjoyed the finer things in life, and as we know sometimes, to excess. He was always planning the next big trip away. You could always rely on Bry to be the sounding board for truth. Ask him a question you wouldn't want, never ask him a question you wouldn't want to hear the answer to. That's one of the things I loved about him, his lack of filter and brutal honesty. Rare to come by. He was always curious, always learning, incessantly trying to indoctrinate his family on topics like why a low-carb diet will keep you alive until you're 150. Bry could come across as strong and stubborn. For those who knew him, well, he was the biggest softie in the room. The eternal optimist who was always looking at the bright side. If you ask people to describe Bry, I'm pretty sure his generosity has touched us all. All meanings of the word generous. Looking back on photos of him over the last few days, many of them are with his nieces and nephews with a big smile on his face. And now it's our turn to make sure his memories stay alive. I never thought I'd miss being called an idiot or a burden on my parents, or that I was dead meat. But somehow, strangely, I do. It feels so strange talking about our Bry in the past tense, someone who was ever present in our lives. He wouldn't want a fuss or tears. Of course, he'd be calling us a big bunch of wussies at this stage. Or too much talking today, so I'd better wrap this up. He would want fun and a celebration with his favourite people. We love you and we will never forget you, Uncle Burpee. You were always the life and soul of any gathering. And just like at a party, you had a sweet but short time. But you'd invariably fall asleep on a sofa somewhere, always leaving the party too soon. Give Grandad a big hug for us. Slán and Codla Solve.
Thanks, excellent, beautiful. Do not consign him to the past. There's a lovely saying that says to To remain in the hearts of those who love you is not to die. And always remember that. Vincent is going to come and say a few words to us.
That was cool. She definitely stole the thunder there. But and then Scott arrived, and it went from there. So pretty much that covered it. Pretty much. But as Declan said and mentioned quite eloquently, that Bry he had his maverick ways, and he had his optimism, and his generosity, his unquestionable intelligence, sensitivity, yeah, okay, but definitely his honesty, and it's that particular trait, as I reflect back over the years, that rings true to me. He was always honest, and most importantly, he was always honest with himself. He gave himself the hardest time, but this honesty, which he then coupled with the bravery to live and speak his truth. Again, for me, that's my overriding memory of Bry. That from the early years right through to now. You didn't always know what you were going to get with Bry, but you knew it was coming from a place of honesty and sincerity. And even if it was wrong or naive, which sometimes he could be, you knew Bry had put thought into it, and he offered no platitudes, no flippant advice, just his honest perspective. He never pretended to be anything he wasn't, even as a teenager, with the pressures of maybe somewhat more sociable older brothers, rapidly followed by sociable younger brothers. He didn't feel the need to put on an act or to follow suit. He wasn't interested in sport like the rest of us. It was, philosophy and astronomy and some weird things called computers, I think, were the thing back then. That and his family. He never shirked from his family. He never outgrew us. He never grew tired of us. He never yearned for something or someone better. We were and have always been his family, and he wanted for no more. He was, however, a man of contradictions. We said he had a cold, methodical brain, yet he was compassionate, sometimes even soft. He was empathetic, and as Dick said, very forgiving. He was highly intelligent, but useless in school. He was often belligerent, sometimes downright rude, yet he was gentle. He was respectful, and surprisingly, he was actually quite tolerant, except for poor service and crappy martinis. But, he was critical, not least of himself and his family, but he was loyal. Damn, was he loyal. And even when he did criticize, his criticism, it was always measured and honest. And more often than not, at the end of it, it would give way to an acceptance and an empathy, and invariably his wholesome support and his very, very best efforts to help. He didn't just leave the criticism hanging there for us all to fall over. He said, "No, let's deal with it. Let's try and fix it." That was Bry. Because he actually, believe it or not, he was a people person in the sense that he understood people. He had a great interest in them, for far more than we give him credit for. He understood the circle of human frailty, and he understood the concept of redemption, and he was always prepared to forgive. And I don't think there's anything really more human than that, and Bry had all of that. He was hugely independent. As Jack and I recently discussed, he almost bordered on a phobia of interdependence. It wasn't his thing. Yet he was the first to proclaim his gratitude for his friendship, his relationship, and his partnership, and the time he spent with Dick. he valued that more than you'll ever know. He was in Dungarvan recently, actually with Mike and I, and in one of his rare moments of vulnerability, he told me that the watershed moment in his life was partnering with death. So we will all feel his loss, but we all know none more than you and Mum. We've spoken of his intelligence and his cold, methodical thought, his fast brain, and he did actually have a wonderful poker face, but he was so bad at poker. Oh. The only time I can really remember him winning was he and Mike and I. We were up, I think in Achill Island or something in the late '80s, and we were running out of drinking money, so we pooled what we had left. And Bryce said he would go to the arcade and he'd play poker against the machine. And of course, he triumphed, and we had a great night. We did. He had a thirst for knowledge and perspective, and he had a faith in science, but he was devoted, at times almost irrationally, to all of us, his family, and his nieces and nephews. And there's absolutely no fear of contradiction when I say his devotion to Mum and Dad over the past 15 to 20 years was second to none. And this devotion goes way beyond that. His devotion goes back to times, guys, we'll remember when we were finally forming opinions and finally seeing a bit of the world and thinking we had every right and entitlement to come back and to judge and make judgment calls on Dad and his business. Well, I was always the first. That was his starting point. That was his default position. Defend Dad. Yikes. He declined parenthood, but he bewitched his nieces and nephews. And most of all, he was an Aegis. But he was our Aegis. And we loved him very, very much. And as Decca said, he has gone far too soon. And we're all the worse for having lost him. But we're all the better for having had him. And I know I am. If by some bizarre twist of fate he had found himself at the pearly gates, staring down... I know. If you're there, Brian, you're staring down St. Peter, please, man, stop digging. You've already lost the argument. Okay? Safe travels, brother. Thank you.
Sue and myself were talking the other day, was that no matter where he travelled to, he was always back to home. And that's a very beautiful thing. We come to that moment where every single one of us, and indeed the people online who have joined us as well, I would ask you to take him in your heart, to take him in your hands, and that you would commend him from your life, your way, his way. And while you do that, you're going to sing Let It Be. Safe place now in our hearts where no storm or night or pain can reach you. And your love for us was like the dawn brightening over our lives, awakening beneath the dark a further adventure of colour. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. And whatever you unfolded in your gaze quickened in the joy of its being. You placed smiles like flowers on the altar of the heart. Your mind always sparkled at the wonder of things. Though your days here with us were far too brief, your spirit was alive, it was awake, and it was complete. And we look towards each other no longer from the old distance of our names. Now you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, as close to us as we are to ourselves. And though we cannot see you with outward eyes, we know our soul's gaze is upon your face. smiling back at us from within everything to which we bring our best refinement. So let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want to find us in presence, beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, dark as winter has turned to spring. And may this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that still loves you. And may you continue to inspire us, to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love, until we see your beautiful face again in that land where there is no more separation, where all tears will be wiped from your mind, and where we will never lose you again. Brian, we give thanks to you for your goodness, your kindness, your generosity of spirit, and above all, your great love. And now all of us wish for you rest and peace in the company of Brendan. We're going to finish with Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.